Hey, it's Felicia Pride, head honey and honey child, and host of It's Good Over Here. Many of you may know, but I started as an author before transitioning to writing for the screen. And all my life, I wanted to write romance, which I've been able to do in my film and TV career. Shout out to Really Love and Tender and Look Back at It in Bel Air. But I never got a chance to do so as an author until now. I'm so excited to announce the upcoming release of my first romance novella entitled Come Close. It's also Honey Child's first foray into publishing fiction. You can pre-order Come Close now on Amazon. Here's a quick synopsis. After years toiling in Hollywood, Amaya Ellis is finally directing her first feature film in her hometown, unexpectedly reuniting her with Kyrie Tate, her high school sweetheart, whom she hasn't seen in decades. He wasn't just the one, he was the standard. But ambitions, dreams, and the world got in the way, and their relationship fell apart. They lost touch, moved on, or so they thought. As fate brings them together, they relive their own movie of their past love and find themselves creating a new story. Hey, honeys. The wonderful thing about It's Good Over Here is that I get to interview guests who I admire. And this week's guest, Nicole Crowder, is one of those Black women. She is an amazing entrepreneur. She has developed her own career in business and upholstery. I have one of her pieces. And today, not only do we talk about her career, but we also talk about life. She is honey in training, soon to be a honey, who found love and got married. And so we're diving into all of that juiciness around love. How do you make space for love when you are comfortable in yourself? And how do you pursue a passion and turn it into a career? Let's get into it. Welcome, honeys in training, and all of those who love us. I'm Felicia Pride, writer, filmmaker, and founder of media and production company Honey Child, where we tell stories that speak to Black women of a certain age with love. And you are tuning into one of our things, It's Good Over Here. It's Good Over Here is your ticket to the delicious adventures in Honeyland. It's a celebration of how good it can get on the other side of 40 across career, life, and love. In each episode, we offer inspiration and insight on aging boldly because, honey, it is good over here. So, hey, honeys, and everyone who loves us. My guest this episode is Nicole Crowder, an amazing furniture designer who I've been following on social media for a minute. And in addition to being a curator and a storyteller, she's the founder of Nicole Crowder Upholstery, a modern furniture design and upholstery studio. Much like us, Nicole draws inspiration from fashion, art, music, and architecture to create what she wants to see. And in her case, bespoke upholstered furniture and soft furnishings. You've seen her work everywhere from Architectural Digest and Martha Stewart Living to Better Homes and Gardens, The Washington Post, and even on the TV show Insecure. And today, we're going to dive into her adventures in life, love, and career as she approaches turning 40 this year. We love our honeys in training, but if you know, like I know, child, it is good over here. Welcome, Nicole.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Felicia. I'm so excited to be here.
I feel like this is long overdue. I've been fangirling over you on social media.
Mutual fangirl happening here. I love all the work that you do. I love the podcast. Send it to every girlfriend I have. So I'm super honored to be with you today.
Well, we're so happy. I mean, I love your work. I think you were running like this special where you were allowing people to pay what they could for a meditation pillow. And so, honey, I have a Nicole Crowder meditation pillow in my home, and it's gorgeous.
Thank you. I'm so happy to make that for you.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I always want to dive in just to hear a little bit about people's stories, because you don't see a lot of Black women in the furniture design space, right? You don't see a lot of us in the upholstery space. Yeah. How did you make that transition into the space? How did you, I'm sure it probably started as a love, but how did you make the transition?
I had an initial foray into upholstery around 2013, I want to say. I was working full time as a photo editor in publishing, and I loved it.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I loved it. I was working with magazines, newspapers, and it was amazing, but I was missing this sort of like hands-on tactile experience. I just was a little bit, I guess, getting tired of being behind the screen all the time. And so I had come across a former RA, actually, from college. She had introduced me to this amazing furniture store in just north of Baltimore, Maryland. I think it was an area called Bel Air.
Oh, shout out to Baltimore. Shout out to Bel
Yes,
Air.
there was a super cool place called Ryan's Relics that sold a bunch of like mid-century furniture. And I remember just getting out there, buying some really inexpensive furniture, some really inexpensive fabric. And I was learning just sort of trial and error, really how to reupholster. And the woman who bought it was an architect. And she was like, you know, do you have more furniture in your showroom? And I was like, girl, this is like my living room. You know, I'm
Right.
kind of working in this small 100 square foot space here. But it really set off a light bulb for me. And I was like, okay, this is all cosmetic in terms of the furniture. Like the wood is what's really important, but everything else can be transformed. And it was just this really beautiful affinity. And I found myself wanting to be on Craigslist at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, like looking at furniture, buying stuff, getting home after work and going straight, you know, into reupholstering. And it just was like this fire was lit inside of me. And I was like, no, I have to follow this.
I love that. I love that. Well, how do you then turn it into this successful business that you have? How do you go from, you know, interest and hobby to successful business?
Yeah, in 2000, gosh, what year was that? 17. I was living in LA and I was working still within like the photo/entertainment field, and I just wasn't getting fulfillment with that. And I decided I wanted to give myself this opportunity to, you know, jump into entrepreneurship full time and make it my livelihood. And so I put my name on my company because I was like, you know, I'm proud of this name. And this means that my craftsmanship is going to have to be really strong because my whole, you know, person.
You putting your name on a line.
My grandfather's last name. Yeah. And so there was a lot of more weight to that. And I decided, also moving back to DC, which is not an inexpensive city to live in, I had to be mindful of my prices, clientele, my whole setup. And so I decided I had created a website before I even had customers. And I wrote my bio in a way that really showcased the focus on craftsmanship, bespoke, really unique pieces with lots of bold furniture. And I took myself seriously and I started advertising on, initially it was Yelp. There was a lot of word of mouth. Word of mouth was incredibly huge. I had friends who were also in the creative field, and they were referring me to clients, to local hotels that they were working with. And so my name just kind of grew. And then Instagram was a huge, you know, boost for me in being able to share something so visual. And a lot of people weren't familiar with upholstery, certainly not with the technique and the process. And it was a unique positioning that I had to show myself as a Black woman working behind the scenes, you know, showing the sort of how-to and the process that got a lot of people excited. And all my clients came from that. I've not paid for public, or was it PR, for marketing. It's just been word of mouth.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think that speaks to the quality of the work too, right? Like word of mouth can only take you so far if the quality of the work is not there.
That part.
So I love that. But I also love what you said. I took myself seriously. That is huge because, you know, first of all, we have so many things coming at us, so many thoughts, fears, and then other people's fears and thoughts and isms thrown at us. And for you to be like, no, I'm going to take myself seriously is a big deal.
Yeah, it was a whole mindset shift of like, you're dealing with people's money. There's a lot of responsibility in that. And not just the money, there was a lot of heirloom furniture that I was getting too, things that had been in people's homes for generations. And having the privilege to, you know, be trusted with their work, that started to click for me also. And I began thinking more about the storytelling aspect that upholstery allowed me. And there was this nice dovetail between that and the work that I was doing in photo editing, putting together packages and telling stories, but with visuals. And I started to see like I didn't have to so much of separate and say, I'm just a furniture designer, I'm just an upholsterer. It became like I'm a storyteller, I'm an artist. And that allowed me to speak to people differently. It allowed me to assert my pricing because I was coming from that standpoint. It wasn't just a service that I was offering. It was a whole experience that I was, you know, providing, and one that was unique. And it really was incredible because people were like, your price points were a little higher than the other, folks who I reached out to, but I loved your customer service. I loved your vision. I loved your craftsmanship. So I want to invest in this. And that to me was significant because it is an investment, being able to upholstery is sort of like a luxury item, really.
Yeah. No, and I can only imagine because you are both the business owner and the talent, essentially, right? I can only imagine how hard it was to build a business and entrepreneurship in itself. And what has been your experience as a Black woman entrepreneur?
Ooh.
And also one who, this was like a second career for you, right?
It's been so varied and like many careers, so nonlinear in terms of, I've been fully self-funded in doing this, and upholstery is very expensive, very taxing. The fabric, the tools, there's certain things you can buy and it's like a one-off kind of expense. But with fabric, it's different fabric for every piece, and there's so many price points. And so I really had to, and also being a woman who, especially in DC, was the only woman I knew who was operating in this field. You're also on site for some places and there's all men around you. And you're sort of like, okay, I have to not just navigate and negotiate with my client, but with the other contractors who are here. And I had to thicken my skin a lot in these places because people are negotiating on their behalf. They're not considering you. They're not considering your background or your needs. And I was like, how do I do this, but also, keep my own integrity intact? How do I maintain who I am as a person? And so it was, you're operating on these multiple tiers of artist, bookkeeper, accountant, you're negotiating contracts for yourself, you're pitching. And I just was like, I got to be sharp as often as I can in these sort of scenarios, but not lose my own kind of softness, my own approach to being a little woo-woo in my work. I was like, I'm going to bring my whole self to this if I'm going to do it.
Yes.
And,
I love that.
Being a Black woman also in this space, and also a young Black woman, because a lot of upholsterers are older white men. And so when you show up on a job site, they are not expecting to see whoever was behind that screen initially. And I've had some clients who were like thinking I was maybe the intern or something. And I just had to show up and
that old trick. Yeah.
But it's like,
I was like, we still doing that?
Exactly. And it's like, you might think that, but the fee is still the fee, it's still here. And I'm going to add.
I need to put that on a shirt. The fee is still
it's
the
still
fee.
The rate.
Whatever you
and I'm adding 20% because I understand there's going to be more back and forth with you. But
for my emotional labor.
Exactly. Yes. But upholstery also helped me, I think, slow down and be more intentional about how I worked, because I'm a very quick moving person, like fire sign, Aries, very like go do, talking fast, all of that. And with upholstery, you have to kind of slow your hand down and really pay attention to the details, the threading, the stitching, the sewing, the stapling. And it's not so much a risk of there's a slight risk, of course, of hurting yourself, but it's more so in the mistakes and those translating to the client. And I really feel strongly that the work you do, you infuse it with energy as well, that you bring it.
Yes.
So it's just helped me to really slow down and be kind of this meditative process, almost to a point where I like it feels second nature when I'm doing it, and I can, just sort of think, or maybe think more expansively when I'm working in this field. And that's been a gift.
I love that. Acting on your ideas is a form of self-love. And when I decided to write the Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal, it was with you in mind. Storytellers with stories inside of you that you need to get out into the world. But life, fear, uncertainty has a way of leaving us stuck. But no more. It's time to reclaim our creative practice and get unstuck. The Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal can help you get back on creative track. 30 days of dynamic prompts, exercises to stimulate creativity, alongside motivational quotes, journal pages, and more. If you're ready to create again,
Get your copy of the Creative Comeback Workbook and Journal today at creativecomeback.com. That's creativecomeback.com. Because it's never too late to become the artist you always wanted to be.
I love that's amazing. I'm like, let me go ahead, start to sew or
Truly.
something. I need to slow down. But I love this because especially as two Black women entrepreneurs, what I find is that we tend to pour all of ourselves into the work. We leave little room for personal lives. It becomes all consuming. And so I'm scrolling Instagram one day and I see a post and you like, I'm getting married. And I said, we need to talk about this on the podcast.
You said, where he been?
I want to talk about but also just like, there's all these things about you can't have it all. And I know how tough it can be, one, to date. You mentioned dating in DC, so we can talk about that because I lived in DC. But just how hard it is to date when you are an ambitious woman, when you are an ambitious Black woman. So, and also to be getting married, quote unquote, later in life, right? So this is a big adventure. Now, have you gotten
No,
married?
we get married in 2.5 weeks.
So, oh my goodness, you get married soon. So you're about to embark on this big adventure. And that's what It's Good Over Here is all about, these adventures that Honeys in Training and Honeys are about to embark on. So I want to dig into, what was it looking like in DC in terms of dating and being single, and where were you mentally? And then, your partner walks into your life.
Oh my goodness. I had really high hopes for myself in DC because I had moved from New York and I was like,
okay, yeah, I can see how you could feel that way.
I was like, oh, there's going to be lots of options. This is going to be great. Yeah, and it's kind of started that way. I had one partner, the only partner who I met in person, honestly. Everyone else after him was through dating apps, so we can get into that too. But oh my gosh, I think I was when I first was dating, I was working full time. And so my early partners were, we both had full-time positions. We're navigating, these sort of similar schedules. And then years down the road, when I was getting into upholstery and really starting to see like, okay, there's a lot of different energy, as an ambitious and also visible person, dating someone who works in a way that is very opposite from that. And I didn't have the language initially to even ask the questions of like, are you comfortable, with me being visible and with my schedule and this? And thinking about those partners, there was so little support. There was no support. Ooh. It was like,
child, I feel like this is about to be a therapeutic session because when I say I felt that in my bones to my core,
it was very much like wanting the bad bitch, but not able to allow her the spaciousness to be herself without that air of competition, of feeling like you had to do the one up kind of thing. There was just there was a lack of curiosity too, I think, with some of those partners.
And interest, right? Like genuine interest in me as a person.
Yeah,
and
it was, I remember there's a big like outdoor craft event in DC called Crafty Bastards. And I remember leaving this one partner leaving the house. I had stayed over. It was 4 o'clock in the morning because we had to set up. Set up started at 6. And so I'm leaving to go and set up by myself. And he's like, I will meet you there later. And I'm just like, that's really when it had hit me of like, no, Cole, the self-esteem has got to come higher than this.
Woo, honey, can we talk about that? Because I am right there with you. I, had a point where I was like, oh, my self-worth is really low right now. And that's why I am in these relationships and in these scenarios that, same thing, different face. And really had to work on that piece. And for me, I talk about this. I didn't really start loving myself till like 38 and a half years old. I'm very specific.
That part that's the part where I was recently, I would say as recently as even 3 years ago, getting into this relationship now, where I was like, having that feeling come up of like, did I love myself before? And, how was I, achieving all the success and sort of outward visibility, but still desiring for someone to like love me, nurture me in a way, and not feeling like I was getting that. And one of my really beautiful girlfriends, we did like a Akashic reading session. That's what it was. And
now, what is that? I am not familiar.
It's beautiful. Akashic readings they're similar in some ways to like when you go for like your spiritual readings, the spiritual guide, in that your ancestors are speaking through them to you, but it's not so specific. It could be many spirits are talking to you as well. And there's this sort of like this interpretation of your future focus more so than like past. And I had a couple of questions for her, but one specifically was around like relationships. And she was saying, what I'm getting is a really clear message that they want you to write sort of a book, but it's more like a pamphlet just to yourself, kind of like a journal entry, but a little bit bigger, where you answer the question of how you neglected yourself in relationships. And not how you were, neglected by others. And I sat back.
The spirit said, ask the tough question.
Listen, it said, this is the area we need to focus on. And I remember sitting on my balcony. A friend had given me like a kind of mortar and pestle to write and put everything in and then burn afterward, because that's also what the message was. And I just remember writing like all these ways that I had poured into partners and had not asked for that reciprocal support or care. And maybe I didn't think I was deserving of it or that they would give it to me. So much came out.
Child.
So much came out on that balcony,
I know it did. I know it did. So it almost sounds like you manifested love into your life as you were clearing out, because that's like sounds like a clearing
very
ritual.
much, yeah.
As you were clearing out, you were making space.
I was, and I was making space, and I think also the universe was like pushing me in the direction back towards home, where I could meet that person, who would fill that space. Because when I was in DC, I was getting ready to move to LA. That was my whole plan. It was like June 2020, I had made the decision that I was going to move, go for more spaciousness and warmth. And I had all my stuff packed up in a warehouse in New Jersey. December 2020, I had come home to Minnesota to spend the holidays with my family. And I was just finding such a hard time, finding a place in LA remotely, doing the remote, tours and stuff. And some of the property managers weren't on the calls at all. And I was like, what is going on? And my mom is the one who planted the seed. And she was like, maybe just kind of look around, Minneapolis, hang out here for a few months until you find something. And I was like, okay, girl.
Mama knew what she was doing.
I was like, okay, girl.
I knew what she was doing.
Like, I see what you're doing, and I'm going to do it anyway. And I like looked at an apartment. It was the first place that I saw, honestly. And I moved in January, and my whole sort of goal was really to just meet people, find community here. And that's not easy to do when you've moved back in the middle of January, during Minnesota's one of the coldest winters, especially after one of their, most contentious summers with the George Floyd death. There was so many things that were burned down, closed down, boarded up. Nobody was outside. And so I was using that time to really invest more in myself, in my nesting in my new apartment, in pouring back into like what gave me joy and pleasure. I took a break from work. Yeah. It was just this beautiful season. And then that summer, the beginning of summer, I met my now fiance, like within 5-6 months of moving back here.
Wow.
And he's just been such an incredible blessing, because it's like this mirror of the things that I have had, in myself and love for myself, and someone else sort of reflecting that back and tenfold.
I love that. Now, first of all, that's beautiful in so many levels. One, a lot of us don't get the opportunity to even think about moving back home, right? Like, because there's so many things that are shiny that are sort of dangled in front of us. LA being a very shiny thing, New York being a very shiny thing. So to have the space to consider that and actually take on that adventure of moving back home, right? And leaning into it is beautiful. And then meeting your partner, which it sounds like you were in a good place. You were like, honey, I'm centered. Look at my apartment.
Listen,
my business is doing
apartment
good.
was fire. Loved it.
You're like, my life is fantastic. So how do we also, like, how did you make space for him with having such a full life?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. I was literally getting ready to get off the app when I met him on Tinder. And I had been on there for a few months.
Shout out to Tinder. Tinder gets a bad rap sometimes, but shout out to Tinder making love
Tinder
matches.
has been great. And I was getting ready to get off. And I think the next day I had logged in to do so, honestly. And I saw that he had swiped. And something about his presence, his profile just seemed very like light and at the same time grounded. Like he seemed very warm, just very, I don't know, like he had a friendly, warm face. And so even upon matching with him, because in my profile, I think I had mentioned moving back to the area and just, hoping for someone to show me around. And that's the first message he sent me was like, I'd love to, show you around, show you some of the gems here. And the way that I kind of knew or maybe opened myself up more for someone to spend time with somebody was I took the responsibility off myself of always trying to like take the initiative, plan, be available, do the things.
Honey, if planning was a part-time job.
Listen, be in the money, would be in the money. But like
rich,
he leaned all the way in and was just this like, let me show you around. Let me take and do and create and come up with and ideate. And that felt so liberating because I didn't realize how much I just wanted to be nurtured or needed to be nurtured. And, you're going in entrepreneurship. You do all these decisions yourself. You carry such a load. You're trying to also juggle, friendship life. And I fully enjoyed, my singlehood, especially, that's whatever last, I guess from March of starting in 2020, I just was like leaning so much into my own kind of appetites and then meeting someone who wanted to also pour, so much into me. And it wasn't this like, make yourself available to just be in service to them or to prove anything. There was no tit for tat. And he was also very curious about what I did, who I was, and my background. And we learned on our first date, actually, that we both grew up as military kids. And that was a huge piece of the puzzle for me because, and it's funny, I spoke with my cousin this morning and she said something to me that just made me cry. She was like, what I admire so much about you is that you've always been able to transition well. She was like, you have, growing up as a military kid, so many things in flux, from you moving from coast to coast, changing full-time job, entrepreneurship, deciding to move from DC back to Minnesota. She was like, you follow your intuition so well. And I do. And my partner was certainly one of those, intuitive kind of moments where I was like, this person feels right for me.
I love that because I feel like as Black women, we have a really strong intuition that we don't always listen to. And so I love when we are able to be aware that this is my intuition and to listen to it and it guides us in the right direction. Now, you were, 37-ish, I guess, when you all met. Had you been feeling the pressure of marriage? Were people pressuring you? Had you been feeling like before that or previously, or was marriage something that you were interested in previously?
I had gone in like fits and spurts with my interest in marriage, to be honest. There was a whole, I guess maybe in my early 20s, I was like, we got a timeline. This will happen for us, and then you get into the DC dating scene and you're like, okay, maybe, we just need to take care of ourselves. And that's what I was doing. I so loved my girlfriends and our time together. And I always made sure, even if I was in a relationship, like I prioritized my girlfriends because with or without a partner, like we was going to be together. We were hanging out. We were doing life together. And that stayed super central and critical for me. And I didn't have the pressure of getting married. Most of my girlfriends, with the exception of maybe 2, are all single, and we travel so much together. We make plans. We talk about having our Golden Girls lifestyle in the future together, you know, and I was super content with that. You know, certainly going through breakups, you're sad and you miss some of those moments where you're nostalgic for, you know, doing things as a partner. But thankfully, my family didn't put any of that pressure on me. I felt more so pressure, I think, to have kids versus the marriage thing.
Talking about, because the biological and the age.
Yes, all that.
Yes.
But I think my family, they know me pretty well, that I'm like following my path and I will assert that. But I did have like some differences when it came to like how marriage is sort of approached or valued. And my mom, who, you know, is one of my, I love, like, she's my best friend. She has my whole heart and we're so close. But
that's me and my mom.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my bestie and my little baby.
Exactly. And like having a different relationship to her now as, you know, as an adult, as a grown woman, has been really freeing. But it's taken work, a lot of that. And one of those areas was around the conversation about marriage and changing last names even. I remember, this is before I met my partner, maybe like 4 or 5 months, we were at my mom's house and she was talking to me and my sister about changing our names. And she was like, you know, it'll be easier if you just change your last name. And I was like, skirt, you know, no, ma'am, I don't see how that's possible. I don't plan to do that. I was like, you know, there's so much paperwork the woman has to do. She's standing in line. She's changing everything. And my mom.
Yeah. And also you built this business on your
name. That was.
Which was very intentional.
Very, very intentional. And I had mentioned that as well. And I remember my mom was like, well, you know, how do you know? And that question, what got to me, I was like, it felt like this challenge, you know, to me, because I was single. How would I know the difficulties of the process of being, you know, going through marriage and changing a name? And I was like, well, I have friends who have gone through this process and who have told me about it, you know, and I also have access to the internet. So I'm aware of these things. And it was like, my mom and I have never fought before. We've never not spoken before, but that was the issue where we did not speak for like a week. And
oh, wow.
It broke me too, because this is my person.
So do you think it was generational? Do you think it was?
I think so. My mom is fantastic. She's very, very traditional in a lot of ways when it comes to some of the thinking, which is perfectly fine. I think it was more so, I still have this thing, which, you know, amen for therapy, we're working through it. But I have this thing that comes up when it feels a bit like you're being challenged or questioned, you know, about stuff you feel confident in and knowing. And I think that's what was coming up for me, is I was like, my whole experience as a single person, it feels like that's being kind of poo-pooed because I have not had the experience of actually changing my last name. And she and I, you know, talked through that. And it was really a conversation around just finally seeing me as Nicole adult, not Nicole who's just left college.
And I can imagine how hard that is for mothers, though, you know, like seeing us, because it's hard for us to see them as women sometimes with desires and passion and pleasure. So for them to see us as, you know, being able to make these autonomous decisions and know what's best for our lives, like that push and pull is
it's
real.
So real.
So you're about to embark on this new adventure of marriage. What made you, does it feel like an adventure, I should ask? And are there things that you are excited about, things that you might be afraid of?
Yeah, it feels like an adventure for sure. And I think it's also because everything kind of everywhere is happening all at once with this, you know, getting married and then starting a new job very soon. And then also like new projects that are happening. It's all, that's how life is, you know, it all happens at one time. But it feels like an adventure because this is new trajectory, new waters for me, navigating being a wife and being partnered and, you know, talking about finances and your how you're processing things in therapy that hopefully help navigate your relationship, and thinking about, buying a home. And for me, it's really surreal too, because I was very much expecting and planning, sort of just be single, be able to take care of myself in my older age, and, work and make my money to do that. And now thinking about the us, the we, and my ambitions are also impacting my partner as well. It's like, I want to do certain things in the future. How does that impact our family planning or, ability to sort of live in different places? And so, that's been really beautiful, is to process how we both want to show up in our lives and show up in this relationship, and how we can support each other. And I feel it's emboldened me in a lot of ways to like, not just do more, but I think also do a little bit less. I have been incredibly ambitious and, go-getter my whole life. But even thinking about like a family was something. For years, I was like, I do not want to have kids. I'm cool being an auntie, auntie life forever. And, I was talking to my therapist recently because I was like, I'm starting to question myself now, and I don't know why that is. And she was like, I mean, it makes sense. You've moved back home. You're closer to home and your family. You see your nieces and nephews every day. And you're happy and comfortable and safe in a relationship with someone who you can see being partnered with in that way. And I was like, yes, there's like this, not a safety in the sense of like, everything is good. Now we're partnered. And so life makes sense. It's more just like, I don't have to try and do everything myself and make those decisions alone, or feel like I don't have a support system with me.
That sounds like a huge transition, because I'm thinking about it for myself, because I'm kind of where you're saying, where you're making plans for retirement and making sure you're going to be okay and all those things. So that sounds like a very big shift.
Oh, yeah.
To
talking about like
I'm just
finances too. It's I think I had some secret shame around talking to my partner, because he has a full-time staff job and steady income, and me with entrepreneurship, it is very up and down, very it fluctuates. And there's points in the relationship where I have been the breadwinner, and there's points where he is, and those points where I was, and I was like, oh my gosh, it started to sort of mess with my identity a little bit. And it made it difficult for me to have conversations when I was feeling more vulnerable, because I was like, I don't have as much as I did. And I never was able to, talk about that with previous partners. And so even finding the language to do that in this relationship has been, something I've been navigating, and, or we've been navigating together. And he's just been like, just the support that I couldn't even have imagined for myself. I am really grateful to have been able to share, I don't have this right now, or I'm working towards this. I might not have it till later, whatever the case is. And someone who was like, cool, got you. Like, we can make a plan together. This isn't something you have to navigate alone. And I'm trying to come out of that.
That is beautiful. It sounds like this relationship has challenged you in really beautiful ways, like ways that is continuing to allow you to grow, which is a gift, because we know a lot of relationships aren't necessarily like that. So I love that for you.
Thank you, sis. Thank you so much.
Now, what would you, for those who are considering getting married, or want to get married and may not have found that person yet, what advice or insight, and for honeys or honeys, soon to be honeys, what advice would you have for that, or insight?
Honestly, same advice I have for myself, which is enjoy your life where it is with the people who are in it, and not feel like anything is missing. Like, there is nothing wrong with having ambitions to either have more money, job, partner, whatever the thing is, live in a different place. I think it's like trusting too, like these are things that you desire, and the universe wants to bring them into your life. It wants you to have all that abundance. There is nothing that is being denied of you or to you, but like leaning into the area that you are right now, with the people you have in your life, with the fruit that you have in your life, and knowing that more is to come. Like this, just the toppings are just being added. It's not that you got to change, follow a formula, or take anyone else's advice. There's a lot of advice that is given about like how you have to even position yourself to be in the line of sight of a partner. Exhaustion.
Oh,
exhaustion.
It is exhaustion because I
don't have
it.
I don't have the desire to like, no. And maybe there's a bit of contrarian, with that, where I'm just like, you tell me to do something, I want to do something else. But like, it's, I had to, for myself, really enjoying where I was and less pressure on like, even this person has to be him, or I have to comport myself in a certain way, and just like living freely, and being in the spaces that you want to be in anyways, to allow someone to naturally, you bump into them because you're already doing what you naturally love to do.
I love that. So you mentioned, that there's a lot of newness happening, but what is next to come for you in career, in life? What's next?
So many beautiful things. I am in the midst now of actually transitioning away from upholstery as my full-time beat. Yes, you are getting the tea.
The exclusive.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've been thinking about working differently, I think, in a more expansive way. And I've been doing this for about 8 years, and I love it. It's been amazing. Yeah. But there's just these inklings that also come up that like, it's not your full identity, and there's other ways that you're supposed to grow, and utilize this field to help me get access to those other areas. And I've been really fortunate and blessed with upholstery to just be in spaces and rooms I never even thought. But my heart is so tied to news, print, and magazine. I freelance, as a magazine editor now, and I'm about to step into a new role as the photo director over the arts and culture for the Star Tribune newspaper here in Minnesota. I know. I'm incredibly excited. It is like, I started in magazines and newspapers, and to be able to go, I guess, back into it, but in a much more robust way, being able to impact the visuals and the storytelling, that's like where my heart is. And one day in the future, I really would hope to like open my own sort of like print magazine kiosk and just be a little shopkeeper, I would love it.
I
would love it.
I mean, my first love, in addition to books, was magazines.
Yes.
I used to collect magazines. I always dreamed about writing for magazines, and that's how I got into writing.
Love it.
I feel that, and I'm so excited for you. This is another big adventure, and I hear what your cousin is saying in terms of the transition, and I love that you remain open to your heart's desires and to your intuition and inkling and just going for it.
Thank you so much. I've been, really trying to just lean into this sort of like fluidity of gifts and talents. If there's something you are capable of doing and there's an opportunity for doing that, I'm flowing with that. But there is a really big museum exhibition that's opening in New York.
Amazing.
It's a year-long.
That is amazing.
So fun. We've been working on it for about 2 years now, and it'll be open for 1 year.
That is exciting. Honey, I'm excited.
Got stuff.
I am super, super excited. And, one of the things, 2 words are really important to us here at It's Good Over Here and at Honey Child is desire and pleasure. And I feel like a lot of this conversation has been and we define those very expansively, right? Like what it is you want and what makes you happy, essentially. And I feel like a lot of that conversation is you embracing and leaning into and accepting your desires and your pleasures. Yeah. What does pleasure seeking look like to you now?
Ooh, that's such a beautiful question. Interestingly, it's circling back to those things that I maybe took for granted, but just sort of enjoyed doing on my own. Like, I'm with people so much, whether it's for work or it's family, it's with my partner, friends. I've been leaning so much into like the joy of doing things by myself. I love solo vacations. Like, I'm planning like sort of a 2-parter. One is like a staycation just here in the Twin Cities, but luxuriating at a hotel, getting my spa treatment, massage, a nice comfy robe, and then, taking myself for like 3 or 4, maybe a whole week to someplace like on a coast, travel overseas and just, connect with myself in a way that I can't when I'm around people. There's a lot of things. I like to take my downtime and spend it just honestly thinking. I know sometimes that feels like you're not like waste of time, but just sitting and being still and just like thinking and or looking out the window, those are things that bring me pleasure right now, because I'm not constantly reinforcing to my body that we have to be in production mode to feel worthy of anything. We can just be.
Yeah.
And that's been really a gift for myself.
And I find that, at least I have found in my experience, I don't know if this is your experience, but I have found that as I approach 40 and as I get deeper into my 40s, my desires and pleasures changed. And a lot of it is about slowing down and really, what is it that I want to do? And doing I took my first ever solo vacation trip. I've traveled by myself for business, but for my 44th birthday, went to Costa Rica.
Yes.
And I was always like, I don't know, I might be bored on vacation, honey. I was not bored.
Listen,
not
your
once.
best company, your best company.
Not
once.
That's
right.
And so now I'm like, oh, what's next? What's the next place? So I love, as we get to know ourselves more and as we allow ourselves to be ourselves more, we're open to the things that we thought we wouldn't want to do, or we're open to the more quiet things as well. Yeah. As well as these big grand adventures, because it's like I like looking out the window, but I'm about to get married in 2 weeks.
Yes. And next year, I turned 40 in March, so I'm still thinking like I want to do something,
honey.
Maybe a couple things, because very big.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
And I'm big on celebrating. Yeah.
Oh, we have to. We have to. Well, this brings us to our sort of rapid fire style aspect of the show. And, the name of the show is It's Good Over Here. So tell us, what's something that is getting better for you right now, especially as you approach 40?
Ooh, what's getting better? I would say my cooking skills. They're getting better. They're getting better. I'm experimenting more. I've got a bunch of cookbooks. I'm experimenting and back in the kitchen a lot more, especially with my baking. Yes.
Okay, we love that. What would you tell your younger self?
Ooh, I would say, please relax and do not rush. Please relax your body and do not rush.
I can tell my now self that. I love that. And what do you swear by as a very soon-to-be honey? It could be beauty, health, rituals, routines.
I swear by rituals. Like, I make time, my Mondays, Fridays, I bookmark those as like my, easing into the weekdays. I take my Sundays very seriously when it comes to my robes, the things that I put on my body. I'm very into soothing my skin.
I love that. I love that. This has been amazing, Nicole.
Gosh.
Thank you so much for being here. You are, I just, you know people from social media, but I don't think you and I ever have had a chance to really talk. And I just love the way that you language things and you talk about yourself and your work and your life, and also just appreciate you being here and open with us, because I took a lot of things from it.
Oh my goodness.
So I appreciate you.
Thank you. This is truly like the highlight of my week, just being able to sit here and be in conversation with you. I love your voice. So I'm just like, being able to talk to you about, usually with interviews that I'm doing, it's mostly career focused. And so being able to really reflect on my personal life, on transitions in life like this one, I was just super excited to do that.
Yeah. Well, we are super excited. And where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm at Nicole M as in Marie, Crowder. And you can send me an email. And then on my website, NicoleCrowderUpholstery.com.
Amazing. Thank you. We are so excited about all the adventures that are to come for you. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of It's Good Over Here, a celebration of how good life can get on the other side of 40. This podcast is a Honey Child thing, so don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at It's Honey Child. Visit our website at honey-child.com and subscribe to our bi-weekly newsletter, A Taste of Honey.
And for bonus content and other exclusive honey dip stories, subscribe to our Pay What You Wish Patreon, The Honeycomb. Until next time, honeys, it's good over here. You coming? Hey honeys, have you signed up for our newsletter? A Taste of Honey delivers right to your inbox bi-weekly and is full of honey news, conversation, and shenanigans. Sign up now at honey-child.com. That's honey-child.com.